My name is Olivia Chin, and I never thought I'd be standing outside my childhood home on Christmas Eve, feeling like a stranger. The grand Victorian mansion loomed before me, its windows glowing with warm light and festive decorations, a stark contrast to the cold reception I knew awaited inside. At 32, I was the black sheep of the Miller family, or so they thought. While my younger brother Michael had followed our father's footsteps into their luxury real estate empire, I had chosen a different path. Wasting your potential, my mother would say, her voice dripping with disappointment whenever she deigned to speak to me. The irony? They had no idea that I was now the CEO of Summit Enterprises, one of the largest commercial development firms on the West Coast. The same firm that was about to close a $100 million deal with Miller Properties, my family's company. I stared at my reflection in my car window, adjusting my simple black dress. No designer labels, no flashy jewelry. My mother would hate it, but that was precisely the point. For years, I had maintained this facade of moderate success, letting them believe I was struggling, working as a small-time consultant, as my brother liked to say. Taking a deep breath, I walked up the familiar marble steps. Before I could ring the doorbell, the heavy oak door swung open. There stood my mother, Catherine Miller, perfectly coiffed in her Channel suit, lips pursed in disapproval. "Oh," she said, as if finding a stray cat on her doorstep. "You actually came." "Hello, Mom. Merry Christmas." She didn't move from the doorway. Behind her, I could hear the murmur of voices, the gentle clink of crystal glasses, and classical Christmas music floating from the living room. "The party started an hour ago," she said, checking her diamond-encrusted watch. "You know how your father feels about tardiness." "I had work," I replied simply. She scoffed. "Still doing that little consulting thing? I thought you'd have given up by now." Before I could respond, my father's voice boomed from inside. "Catherine? Who's at the door?" Robert Miller appeared behind my mother, his imposing figure filling the doorway. His eyes narrowed when he saw me, the same look he'd given me 5 years ago when I refused to join the family business. "Olivia," he said, my name sounding like an accusation. "I thought we made it clear you weren't welcome this year. This is an important night for the family." I knew exactly why tonight was important. Miller Properties was hosting their annual Christmas party, but this year was different. Their biggest potential client, Summit Enterprises, was sending a representative to discuss the final terms of their partnership. "I'm still family," I said quietly. My mother laughed, a sharp, cutting sound. "Family? You stopped being family the moment you walked away from everything we built. Do you know who's coming tonight? The Summit Enterprises representative. This deal could double our company's worth. We can't have you embarrassing us." "You're too poor to join us for Christmas," she sneered, eyeing my simple outfit. "What would our guests think?" My father nodded grimly. "Know your place, Olivia. Go home." The words stung, even though I had expected them. 5 years of building my company in secret, of letting them believe I was struggling, all leading to this moment. Tomorrow, they would learn exactly who ran Summit Enterprises, but tonight, I had one more role to play. "At least let me say hello to Michael," I said, knowing my golden boy brother would be inside showing off his new fiancée. "Michael's busy with important clients," my father said dismissively. "He doesn't need distractions." Just then, a sleek black Bentley pulled up to the curb. My parents' expressions immediately shifted, practiced smiles replacing their scowls. A tall man in an impeccable suit stepped out, Marcus Thompson, my chief operating officer and the representative I had sent to handle the negotiations. As Marcus approached the steps, I could see the moment my parents' faces lit up with recognition. They had met him several times during the negotiations, though they had no idea he worked for me. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller," Marcus said smoothly, then turned to me with a respectful nod. "Good evening, boss." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's perfectly maintained smile cracked. My father's face drained of color. In that frozen moment, their carefully constructed world began to crumble. "Be boss," my mother stammered. Marcus continued as if nothing was amiss. "I hope I'm not interrupting, but I needed to confirm a few details about tomorrow's signing with Ms. Chen, the CEO of Summit Enterprises." My father gripped the doorframe for support. "CEO? But you're just a consultant." I smiled, finally letting my carefully maintained mask slip. "Actually, Dad, I own Summit Enterprises. Every property acquisition, every development deal." Every negotiation you've had with Summit over the past 5 years, that was all me. The color drained from my mother's face as the implications sank in. Their $100 million deal, the one that would save Miller Properties from its mounting debt, depended entirely on my signature. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Nothing's impossible, Mom. You taught me that, remember? Right before you told me I'd never amount to anything without the family name." The sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifted from inside, where the party continued unaware of the drama unfolding at the front door. My brother's voice carried above the rest, probably bragging about his role in securing the Summit deal. If they only knew. Marcus cleared his throat. "Should we discuss the final terms now, Ms. Chen? Or would you prefer to handle it at tomorrow's signing?" I could see the wheels turning in my parents' heads, their earlier disdain replaced by dawning horror as they realized just how badly they had miscalculated. The daughter they had just turned away from their Christmas party was actually their company's last hope for survival. "Why don't we go inside?" I suggested mildly. After all, it is Christmas. My mother's hand flew to her throat, fingering her pearl necklace, a nervous habit from my childhood. My father seemed to have aged 10 years in the past 5 minutes, his earlier authority crumbling like a sand castle at high tide. As I stepped past them into the warmth of the house, I couldn't help but think about how different this Christmas would be from all the others. For once, I wasn't the family disappointment they needed to hide away. I was their last chance at salvation. The grand foyer of my childhood home hadn't changed. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors and antique furniture, everything perfectly arranged to showcase the Miller family's wealth and status. But tonight, something was different. I was different. As I walked into the main living room, conversation stuttered to a halt. The party guests, a mix of local business elite and family friends, turned to stare. My brother Michael stood near the fireplace, champagne in hand, his new fiancée Sarah clutching his arm. His easy smile faltered when he saw me. "What is she doing here?" he asked our parents, not bothering to lower his voice. Before they could respond, Marcus stepped forward. "Ms. Chen, shall we discuss the final points of the Summit acquisition?" The room went deadly quiet. I could see confusion rippling across faces as they processed Marcus's words. Michael's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. "Summit acquisition," he repeated slowly. "Why are you talking to my sister about Summit?" I smiled, remembering all the times Michael had dismissed my career choices. "Because, dear brother, I'm the CEO of Summit Enterprises. Have been for the past 5 years. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Sarah's perfectly manicured hand flew to her mouth. "That's impossible," Michael sputtered. "Summit is a billion-dollar company. You're just a consultant." "A consultant." Our Uncle James, a senior partner at Miller Properties, stepped forward. "The Olivia Chen who owns Summit Enterprises, the one who's been buying up prime properties across 3 states. I nodded. "The very same." Uncle James sank into a nearby chair, his face ashen. He had been one of my biggest critics when I left the family business. Now he was realizing that the little girl he had mocked had grown up to become his company's potential savior. My mother, having recovered some of her composure, tried to salvage the situation. While she said, forcing a bright smile, "Isn't this wonderful? Our Olivia, so successful. We always knew you had potential, darling." "Did you?" I kept my voice level. "Is that why you just tried to turn me away at the door? Why you told me I was too poor to join the family Christmas?" Her smile cracked. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. "Now, Olivia," my father started, his businessman persona taking over. "Let's not air family matters in public. Why don't we discuss this privately? Why not here?" I gestured to the room. "Everyone present is involved in the Summit deal, aren't they? They should know exactly who they're dealing with." Marcus pulled out his tablet, his expression professionally neutral. "Speaking of the deal, there are some terms we should review." Michael stepped forward, attempting to regain control. "I've been handling the Summit negotiations. Whatever you need to discuss, you can do it with me." I couldn't help but laugh. "Have you really? Tell me, brother, who did you think you were negotiating with all those times?" His face reddened as understanding dawned. Every meeting he'd attended, every proposal he'd submitted, every time he bragged about manipulating some consultant, he'd been dealing with my company's representatives. Never knowing they reported directly to me. "Those properties in Phoenix," he said slowly. "The downtown development project. The waterfront acquisitions. That was all you? Every single one. I turned to address the room. For 5 years, I've built Summit Enterprises from the ground up. No family name, no inherited connections. Just hard work and determination. The very things this family claimed I lacked. My father stepped forward, his face a mask of barely contained anger. If this is some kind of revenge plot. Revenge? I cut him off. No, Dad. This is business. Summit Enterprises is interested in acquiring Miller Properties because it's a sound investment, or it would be, with proper management. The implications of my words hung heavy in the air. Everyone in the room knew Miller Properties was struggling, that the Summit deal was their last hope for survival. The terms of the acquisition are fair, Marcus added, sliding a document across the coffee table. More than fair, considering the company's current financial situation. My father snatched up the paper, his hands shaking slightly as he read. I knew exactly what he was seeing: the mounting debt, the failed developments, the desperate need for Summit's investment. You planned this, my mother accused, her voice barely above a whisper. All these years pretending to be struggling, letting us think. Letting you think what, Mom? That I was a failure? That I couldn't succeed without the Miller name? I walked over to the fireplace, where family photos lined the mantel. You know what's interesting? There isn't a single photo of me here. Not one, because successful people only write. Michael's fiancée Sarah, ever the social climber, suddenly brightened. Olivia, darling, you simply must come to our wedding. First row, of course. Family is so important. Save it? I cut her off. 3 weeks ago, you told Michael it would be embarrassing to have me at the wedding. That my presence would bring down the tone of the event. Sarah's face crumpled. Several guests coughed uncomfortably. The acquisition papers will be ready for signing tomorrow morning, Marcus announced, breaking the tension. 9 a.m. at the Summit offices. My father's business instincts finally kicked in. We should discuss this privately as a family. Surely we can come to some arrangement. The time for family arrangements was years ago, I said quietly. When you threw away my college fund to support Michael's failed ventures. When you told me I wasn't worth investing in. When you shut the door in my face tonight. I reached for my coat, ready to leave the party I was never supposed to attend. Tomorrow we'll either sign the papers as equals or Miller Properties can face bankruptcy. Your choice. You would do that? Michael asked, incredulous. Let your own family's company go under? I turned back one last time. You all made it very clear tonight, and for the past 5 years, that I'm not really family. I'm just a disappointment who needs to know her place. I smiled. Well, now you know my place, at the head of the table. As I walked out, I heard the whispers start, saw the shocked faces of family friends and business associates who had witnessed the entire scene. My mother's carefully curated Christmas party had become a spectacle, but I felt no satisfaction in that. The next morning, I sat in my corner office on the top floor of the Summit building, watching the city wake up. At exactly 9 a.m., my secretary announced the arrival of the Miller Properties delegation. They filed in silently, my father, Michael, Uncle James, and the board members. Gone was the arrogance from last night, replaced by a grim understanding of their situation. The papers are ready, I said, nodding to Marcus, who began distributing documents. Olivia, my father started, then stopped. For the first time in my life, I saw him struggle for words. Just business, Dad, I said quietly. Isn't that what you always taught me? One by one, they signed. When it was done, Miller Properties became a subsidiary of Summit Enterprises. The company they had dismissed me from now answered to me. As they stood to leave, Michael lingered behind. Why didn't you tell us, he asked, all these years? Would it have made a difference? I asked. Would you have respected me more? Treated me like family? He had no answer. After they left, I stood at my window, looking out at the city skyline. The empire I built, the success I'd achieved. It hadn't been about revenge. It had been about proving something to myself. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. We're having a family dinner tonight. Please come. I smiled sadly and typed my response. Sorry, I have a business meeting. You understand, successful people only. Then I turned back to my work. I had an empire to run, and this time, I didn't need anyone's approval to do it. Some say success is the best revenge, but I've learned it's more than that. Success is about becoming the person you were meant to be, despite those who said you couldn't. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the power to walk away from those who never believed in you, even if they're family. Especially if they're family. 1 year later, I sat in my office reviewing the annual reports. Miller Properties, now a subsidiary of Summit Enterprises, had transformed under new management. The failing projects my brother had championed were restructured, and the company was finally turning a real profit. My phone buzzed with another text from my mother, the 10th this week. Ever since last Christmas, my parents had launched a desperate campaign to rebuild our relationship. Fancy gifts arrived at my office, all returned unopened. Invitations to family events piled up, each one ignored. They even tried showing up at Summit's headquarters, only to be politely turned away by security. Please come to Christmas dinner this year, my mother's text read. We miss you. I set the phone aside without responding. The words rang hollow after decades of dismissal and disappointment. Michael had been demoted after a thorough audit revealed years of mismanagement. Now he worked under one of my senior directors, learning the business properly for the first time. His fiancée Sarah had called off their engagement once his position of power crumbled. Last I heard, she was dating a hedge fund manager. My father had officially retired, though I suspected it wasn't entirely by choice. The board, recognizing the company's improved performance under Summit's leadership, had made it clear that the old way of doing business, favoring family connections over competence, was over. Ms. Chen, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your next appointment is here. I smiled, knowing who it was. Send them in. A young woman entered, clutching a portfolio and looking nervous. I recognized that look. It was the same one I'd worn fresh out of college before I learned to believe in myself. Jessica Turner. I gestured for her to sit. I reviewed your proposal. Tell me more about your ideas for sustainable urban development. As she began her presentation, I saw the same fire, the same determination I'd once had. She had talent, drive, and innovative ideas. Everything my family had overlooked in me. The industry giants won't even look at my proposals, she admitted. They say I'm too young, too inexperienced.